I'm AJ Bianco from Podcast PD, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows in the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Pointing that it's now the Gameful series.
I'm gonna have to go edit a lot of things.
In that episode was not even like, here's how you create a game. It's more just like, here's how you kind of have fun with ideas, right?
Yeah.
Like, here's
Yeah.
how.
Math Blaster.
Oh, yes! Welcome to another week, the High Tech Podcast, where we take everything way too seriously. And you're joined by Will Illingworth, hard-hitting reporter, and Josh Schwartz, hard-hitting. I can't do it. I've lost it.
I loved it. I was just like, I love where this is going. Let's make a shtick, man.
Total tonal shift for the High Tech Podcast. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Another week, another episode. More content, more shenanigans, or high-tech hijinks, depending on how you define it.
Yes.
You know how we do. Never gonna say that again. So anyway, another week, jumping in, got some cool stuff we're gonna be talking about. We're gonna be closing up our game-based learning series. Whew, it's hard to believe.
Three is a series, right? Three
Yeah,
counts?
3 is a series.
Yeah.
Listen, we can define whatever the heck we want, and it's a series, okay? If they can do The Hobbit in 3 movies, I can do whatever the heck I want with this series, okay?
That was horrible.
We don't want to talk about it. Anyway, we're finishing up that short series, movie series, whatever you want to call it, trilogy. I don't care. You call it whatever you want.
The
I'm
game-based
never going to
learning
know.
trilogy.
Game-based learning trilogy. But before we do that, and we get into all the crazy stuff that Will and I have to say, just a little opening that we do sometimes, that we
Wait,
talk
what?
about.
We do this?
Yeah, well, it's new. They haven't heard it
Never.
yet, especially not for the last couple months. Anyway, if you are listening to us on one of your podcast platforms, you're like, man, I wish I could talk to these guys more. I wish I could hit them up on a social media platform of sorts. You're in luck. We're on social media. We're on Twitter. Come check us out on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. You can send us a tweet, because that's what you do. And you can connect with us. We'd love to connect with you over there. We love to connect with people through the podcast, so you can check us out there. You can also email us at inbox@hightechpod.us. If you still do email. My wife thinks people don't, but she is wrong.
I just heard her say not 30 minutes ago that she has a whole separate email inbox for this whole thing. She doesn't work, and she has 100 emails in there. So clearly, she uses it.
People use email. So if you use an email, you can hit us up there. Either one of those areas, you can send us our classic, and now I would consider our shtick. I feel like we've been doing it long enough now. It's a shtick.
Yeah.
You can send us an animal photo. If you've just listening to us for the first time, we love to ask people to send us animal photos each episode, mainly to prove that you listen to us. And so
it's the only encouragement we get.
it's the only way we get it. These are our low-key analytics. So you can hit us up at inbox or Twitter, and the animal picture you're gonna send this week. I gotta think about these sometimes.
No.
I don't.
We need
I
a
don't think
list. We need to put this in Notion.
We need to keep track. Yeah, we do need to start putting this in Notion.
I'm
what?
Oh,
You give it. Will.
all right.
I've been doing it so often. I feel like it's
I've
your
got it.
turn.
I was
It's your
ready.
turn.
I want
Go for it.
a penguin holding a pencil.
More alliteration. Solid work. Yeah, we've been stepping it up a little bit. Okay, penguin holding a pencil.
If it's a
Okay?
real live penguin, I mean, just kudos.
If you have a pet penguin and you can get it to hold a pencil, that would be
I will give
amazing.
you the podcast. You can have the
Well,
podcast if you have.
Okay. I will not, but I will give you something better. Kudos. Yeah.
And a golf clap. A nice
And a golf clap. Yeah, just a
quiet
little golf clap.
golf clap.
Yeah. So anyway, hit us up there. And then also, if you've never checked us out online, we have a website, hightechpod.us. Every episode we release a nice episode page with some fun resources and some things and some stuff. So you can check it out there and have some fun. Again, hightechpod.us. Anyway, stop it. Enough. Get behind me, Satan. No, just anyway. So Will, we've been doing doing a thing for the last 2 weeks. What have we done?
Game-based learning, we had Chris Morris in episode 1. Well, it was really episode 54.
If you're gonna be talking about numbers, you gotta remember.
I had to scroll up. I mean, I just sat there. I was like, is it anywhere on my screen? No, it's not. Scroll up. It's going to be there. Chris Morris was on for Game-Based Learning 54. He talked to us about a lot of the technical stuff. That was great. And we found out
the VR wizard
designers across games or content, instructional content, aren't that much different functionally.
He's basically a backwards designer. And quite frankly, he does better than some instructors I know.
He just has
he's designing video games,
artistic design in it as well. Which I have.
When he's done, he just gets a fun VR game. When we're done, students get grades.
Who really wins there, frankly? And then 55, we had Dr. Justin Harbin back with us, and he just slapped us with the book. I mean, theologian after philosopher after
pedagogian, reforming educator to late night talk show host, you know? Which obviously Colbert heard that episode and was like, oh, I need to end up on the High Tech Podcast.
That's why we're now famous. Colbert's on next week.
It's true. He's coming next week. That's
a joke.
That's not true. That's a lie.
/ sarcasm.
For sure not real. But that would be cool. Colbert, if you're listening, you should come get us up. I know.
Hey, Steve.
I know we're clearly on your listen track.
Good buddy Steve.
hey, Steve-O. You wanna? Yeah, he's not coming on now. If he did listen, and I just called him Steve-O, he's for sure not coming on the podcast.
Turning around and walking the other direction. But what was cool between those two, in my opinion, was that we got some hard technical insight on both fronts. Frankly, like Justin's stuff is very technical, theoretical knowledge, and Chris's is very technical, gaming knowledge. And I think between the two of those areas, we do have the opportunity to invest in our classrooms. Like I think both of them showed us that it's a lot harder than we think, and at the same level gave us some opportunities to be like, it's not that. There are things we can do, small things that could be just in the next class you do, or in the next course, or a completely new course. But I think we can do this. That's my leading message here. We can be gameful in our teaching and learning.
Ooh, gameful. I'm not even sure we use that terminology throughout the first 2 episodes. Coining that. It's now the Gameful series.
I'm going to have to go edit a lot of things.
Anyway, So with game-based learning, or as other people here refer to gamification, we explained in the first episode kind of before, and when we were talking to Justin, why we chose game-based learning over gamification, because we felt like game-based learning encompasses more. But either way, I think like with both of those, I came into the series a little skeptical. I'll be honest. It's with the game-based learning component, I've seen it done poorly more than I've seen it done well. And so I've always been kind of a little like, okay, this was a popular thing for the last decade. We're all excited about it. Everybody was like, Kahoot! And then they became a thing.
Tons of people made MOOCs, and tell me the last time you took a MOOC. It's just
or LMS started getting badges, and we were like, ooh, badges.
Oh, yeah.
We're super excited. So, but I will say this. I think what I took out of this is this idea of game-based learning is a lot deeper than we think it is, right? So, it's, especially talking to Justin, there's a lot of kind of, philosophical and almost like human components to this idea of what he talks about, which is like playful learning. This idea of that learning is not this perfect system where we allot out all this perfect time, we get through all this stuff, and we love efficiency. But at the end of the day, learning can be very inefficient sometimes, and it's better. Sometimes can be better to be inefficient.
Well, and you raised that point a lot. You raised that point a lot about the games themselves, right? There's a lot of games that make you fail often, and it's frustrating, and
we learn from failure, and so I think there's this component of how can we allow students to low stakes experiment with ideas, fail sometimes, get feedback that's not always super positive, but not worry about failing their entire major and still learning and dealing with ideas and still getting to our goals, but slowing down and taking time to do that. Most of the stuff Justin talks about is in that episode was not even here's how you create a game. It's more just here's how you kind of have fun with ideas, right? Here's how you open up the door to let students discuss more, or you slow down a bit and you have more discussion based stuff, or let them experiment with ideas and come up with stuff. I think it's a lot deeper than we thought it was. And
and one of the things that like I've been reflecting on, we play games all the time. We talk about that. So it's not something that's far from my mind, but like I was on a recent family vacation, and Casey, who's been on the podcast before, that she listens with some frequency, but Casey's husband, Pat, was at the dinner table with me. I forget what I was doing, but he just set up on the other side of the table for me and started playing solitaire. And like he had to like do a little Googling to make sure he remembered all the rules and stuff. But he like sat down and he started playing some solitaire in front of me, and like that was one of those things that reminds me about gamefulness and gameplay and the idea of what games can do for you. Like we're all just chilling. He could have watched TV with somebody else. He could have joined the puzzle. He just decided to play a game of solitaire with himself, which the sole objective is to win or lose. There's no journey necessarily in solitaire, right? Like we might play Elden Ring to go on the journey. There's so much that happens throughout the entire spectrum of the game Elden Ring that you sometimes you beat this boss and you fail to that one, and you find this treasure and you can't find that one. Like there's pluses and minuses all throughout the gameplay. Solitaire is win or lose. Like you beat it or the game beats you, and yet like it's fun. There is something to it that's challenging. It's a little mindless. It's a little quiet, but it's like the original Bejeweled. People play Bejeweled for hours on end. You never win Bejeweled. You cannot win it. There is no done with Bejeweled, but people will play it for hours and hours and hours. And I think that's one of those things to kind of take in mind. Like, I think some of us need to approach some of these opportunities more like Pat. Like, oh, I just want to play a little bit. I just want to see if I still remember how solitaire works and if I like it and what it's like. Like that's that playful attitude that Justin's speaking to, and was calling more teachers to engage in their teaching, right? If we could just be more playful about this, like you were just saying a moment ago, try it, test it, see if it works. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe you learn something that does work. It's not the whole idea, but a piece of it, and you take that piece, and that's what starts to change something in your classroom.
Yeah, I think it's this idea of, and I think it's tough. I think my criticism still with all of this is like, it is tough to figure. It's less concrete than we think it is, which is why I think we often end up with like just courses with badges, or like you can choose this path
because
not,
that is concrete, right? Like that is something concrete. You can
like
see.
We're like, oh, we could do that, but like a lot of the core stuff that makes game-based learning so helpful is hard to kind of grasp to a certain extent when it comes to learning. And I think I'm still, and that might just be me still trying to wrap my head around all this, because we did a series in 3 episodes instead of like 5. I think the core piece of it for me is just that we need to figure out a way in little ways to allow students to slow down and experiment and have fun with things. And allow more progression to happen. I think in learning, we've gotten into this place where it's like, you learn this, you maybe discuss this, you do this, and then you get an activity and you get a grade on that activity, and then you move on to the next stage or whatever it may be. And we need to give them some more low stakes way of experimenting in class with ideas and things we're working with, so that they can, but still showing progression and like tying it to good reasons to motivate them. Although I appreciate Justin's feedback in the second episode that motivation is way harder than we think of, and that's at a we'll get to some of this application stuff here in a second, but I think what Justin was kind of getting at is like, I'd at least like to tie stuff into, okay, how can I slow down and have students reflect, or how can I build in more formative assessment type of activities throughout a course, so that there's progression and there's this feeling of, working through things, and you're evaluating what they're learning and how ideas are coming together.
Something concrete to tie to that progression point, though, is that we technically do have a progression in every course, right? Week 1, week 6, week 1, week 8, week 1, week 15. Like there's a beginning and there's an end of the course. So that's the progression. But too often, I think there's no continuity and cadence in that, right? That's something Justin's been telling me about for years and years. Like there needs to be a cadence to learning, that like week to week, there's something that you do with some regularity. There's a pace to it. There's some consistency in trying, failing, retrying, succeeding, whatever that is, right? But that continuity piece tying into that cadence is to say, when's the last time you took a course where every week built on itself. Like every week you needed week 1 to get to week 2. Like I've seen way too many courses where it's like week 1 is topic A and week 2 is topic 35. Like there's you know what I mean? It's like one day is apples, the next day is the color black. They're not like categories. And in video games, we see you start at level 1 and you level this feature up, and then you get to level 2 and you're still using that feature, and you can level that feature up to level 2, and then you get to level 3, and like that continuity is there in video games. But in our courses, sometimes we're doing like a I can't think of the term, but like a cursory course. Like we're going to go and I'm going to do Psych 101. I need to learn all the different things in Psych. So yes, that's going to be different topics about things that is in Psych. But the next course up in that should have I think a good consistency to say, or continuity to say, what do I learn in week 1 and how am I going to improve that weeks 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 15. Maybe it's not the entire course, but like we pretty much do courses where it's week 1 and done, week 2 and done, and there's no continuity.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely courses that's not the case. I mean, I think I've seen both ways. I think you're getting onto something though, like motivation wise, how can we tie each cadence of content or learning to the next cadence so that we can help motivate them to engage with this piece, mess with these ideas, learn more about this, because you're going to use this when we come to this next idea. You're going to use this, we get to this next component. Like figuring out that cadence and how things build on top of each other. Like how does this progress? And this gets back to the fact of like what Chris is talking about. When they design a game, they have, most of the times they have a goal that they have in mind. And at the end of the day, everything's kind of building towards that goal. Sure, there's like side quests, there's things that you do off to the side, but all of them have purposes essentially towards the bigger picture of some of these games. Unless of course, you're designing Candy Crush where it's like, it's different. But again, there's some different components to it. And that's where I think this game-based learning, it's not that there's a one size fits all. It's that there's different components of game-based learning that fits different types of things you're learning. Right? And different situations. So, I will say this. So, question, right? So let's pose somebody listening to this podcast, hypothetically, we hope. The two of you. They're going, this is great, Will and Josh. But what I want to do some game-based learning. What should I do? I listened to your first 2 episodes. That was great, but I'm not designing a VR game. I listened to your last episode, and that's great, but you guys basically went everywhere in philosophy to all this type of stuff. Practically, I like to know like what are 3 things I could give a try, or like takeaways I could go with and take a look at what I'm doing. You know what I mean? It's almost like we planned this.
Weird.
Yeah, weird. So, Will, what would you say to that hypothetical person listening to our podcast maybe next week or the week after?
3 months from now. Number 1, I think it sounds too simple, but let us hit you with it and then start to plan how you're going to do it. Design, keep the goal in mind, right? This idea that
guys, we did that.
We nailed it. Stuck the landing.
I
want you to hear that it's not just something you throw badges at, right? It's something that if you're going to use badges, they need to be incorporated into your curriculum. They need to be a part of the grading structure. I'm not saying that's specifically it, but like they need to be baked in. It needs to be a part of the ship. It can't be a dinghy that your ship is pulling along, right? Like, That image to me is like, I get Pirates of the Caribbean and all sorts of images of like, this dinghy is useless. You've got a ship there. You want to make it a part of the ship because that's going to make the ship more effective.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Like Josh and I love design. We love this idea. We do this in everything we do, from curriculum to just technology adoptions and stuff like that. There's a purpose. There's a goal. We're trying to, when we give you these episodes about ed tech, like, yeah, sure, we just pick a lot of ed tech, but our goal usually is like, hey, Otter. I want you to think about the app Otter. We want you to have that because the goal is to solve issues where you're dealing with transcription and accessibility related to voice and text, right? When we give you, something like Nearpod, the goal, right? We want to solve the issue of engagement or work on the issue of engagement. We deal with that goal and we work backwards from that every time. When we pick a technology for someone we're working with, it's not just Nearpod because I like Nearpod. I can put Nearpod up against Pear Deck, up against Top Hat, up against, even Plickers and what's the one you text into, Kahoot. There's tons of engagement software you can use that's not just like Nearpod or Pear Deck, right? And we're trying to make sure that that's a part of this. So if you're going to do this, the very first thing to do is just decide what's the level you want to engage gamefulness, playfulness in your classroom. You do Justin stuff and just do some attitudinal things and how you approach the kids and how you talk. Great. You want to do Chris stuff. You want to design some game elements into this. Like, I don't know, turn all of your grades into XP. That is a concept. That's a gamification concept you can consider, but you need to then design that entire thing. So it's not just, you get 4 XP total and we're going to deal with like mini XP points, and your mini XP points are going to equal 4 XP. You're literally at that point, you're just giving a new name to GPA. You have taken the same 4-point GPA scale and you're calling it XP. That is not game-based learning. So you need to take that idea, though, if you want to do XP instead of grades, and bake it into everything. You have to make an economy. You have to think through, will your students have a peer-to-peer exchange of that economy? Do they get anything from you when they cash in their XP for their economy? Is there going to be an inflation issue with the economy? Is there going to be a credit? Like, these are the fun things, though, that you start to, like, it's not just a simple language shift. It's a system, and that requires design. Sorry, I don't know. I soapboxed that one for a second, but I think that's critical.
Oh, it was good. It was good. I think, and just take a step back from that too, like when we're talking design, we're not talking like, oh, you have to literally redesign your entire course now to be game-based learning. I mean, I know people have done that, and it's fine to do that way, but I think the point is whatever you decide to do, because I'm a huge fan of making small changes.
Yes.
But be intentional about it. Like whatever change you're going to make, like if you're going to decide, you know what, maybe during these 2 weeks, I'm going to try to figure out how can I be more playful during these 2 weeks in what I'm doing, because I've got some difficult ideas these students need to work through, and I want to give them some time to kind of experiment with these ideas, mess around with these ideas. Maybe I give them some type of puzzle or problem to solve with some of the ideas we've been working on, and I slow down, and for a week to 2 weeks, I let them work together in class and try to figure out that problem. Maybe you're teaching a Tanks 101 class and you're like, I want them to figure out, how do I get a Panzer through airport security? I don't know. And you let them work through that for 2 weeks. Yeah, I went there.
High-tech podcast, the place of the absurd, my friends.
Yeah, like, I mean, I'm teaching a class where they have to work through interpreting text. And so, like, I could see, like, we're always moving so fast and having them do different types of things. I could see, like, maybe I want to take and just slow down in this section and let them spend 2 weeks just working on a text and trying to mess with the ideas they haven't really getting deep into it and play it over and over and over again on one idea. And it may feel like it's wasted weeks, but I get some time to like get them to dig in.
At the same level, I love this idea that this interpretation, like I think we could pull up a couple of ways you could gamify that, right? So your first point is just give it more time. Let them try, let them play. You could do another idea though. This is more like into the game techniques or game elements, right? Maybe the main quest is the work that they do with you in class for 2 weeks, but you offer them side quests where they could go be doing the same thing in other texts at the same time on their own. And they could get half the amount of points that they would get for the stuff that they do in class. They could choose not to do it at all, but they could get points for like keep doing more. So they're going to be doing it with you every time, and they're going to do it for a long time in class, but they could do smaller side quests while they're away and submit that online and stuff and get more points for it.
Or
like, same
let's
concept.
Get crazy, right?
Keep going.
So like I like this idea. I like the side quest idea. So let's take my example. So I'm teaching a class. They have to interpret these texts, right? So and they've got to teach them or speak them, work on them in class, right? So what if it was we spend 2 weeks working through this one passage, we're ripping through it, but then you know what? I create some side quests like you're talking about. Let's take it one step farther. Some side opportunities. Maybe I find some places that they can actually go build out something and teach in this, right? And it's not a required part of the class, but they could go do it. Maybe I give a little bit extra credit bonus for doing it, but also they get the actual experience of doing it. And maybe
Right.
we give them some type of thing that, maybe they're building a portfolio in the course or whatever it may be, that they can this is a real life opportunity that they may use later if they're going into the field that we're teaching on.
Are
right?
modeling the behavior with them for 2 weeks, but they have the opportunity to do side quests where they go and do the behavior themselves and run other people through it.
And go do that. And but notice where we're tying in motivation pieces then too in that. Like we're tying in the fact that it's not like they're actually getting a real life experience they're getting to do. They can say they've done it. They're getting to come back from that. And it's low stakes because it's not a grade in the class. Like it's not something that if they don't do, they're going to fail my class.
Right.
But it's something they're going to get some side stuff off of, and some students will take advantage of that. Other students won't. It's fine. Some people in Elden Ring take advantage of side quests. Some are full completionists like Will. Others are like me who are like, that cave looks hard. I'm going to keep doing the main thing.
I've been watching a streamer whose shtick, his gamification element he brought to the game himself is he's going to do a playthrough with just pants, a captain's hat, and a wooden sword. He is challenging himself to do the entire game with that armor. Why? But that's a motivation thing for him. He's finding it fun and super challenging to try and stack his character to make that work against bosses that usually would just kill that person in a second.
So anyway, those are ways to tie some of that stuff in. I think like you can make that choice. I don't have to restructure my entire class, but here's the point. I'm doing it purposeful. There's a goal to it.
Yep.
And that's, I think, what we're talking about by design, you keeping the goal in mind. It's not about redesigning your whole course. It's about whatever you do game-based wise. You're not just superficially adding a game component to your class, that you're tying it to the design of the course and ultimately at the end of the day to help students further get better and reach the goals. You're trying to build the bridge across the gap in that class. And at the end of the day, that's whatever you're doing is all towards that goal. It's all intentionally put in the course for that.
Clarification on like the main quest, side quest stuff we were just talking about. You do not have to, and this is my issue with gamification. You do not have to gamify your class, call it main quest, side quests, to take advantage of that pedagogical concept. You can just do the main assignment for the week and optional assignments, or you call it whatever. Like, I think the issue I have with gamification is people come in and they're like, let's call grades XP and every project's a quest, and they just call it different things. That's not using game theories to help you teach better. That is putting lipstick on a pig. That's like there's no value.
You're still doing the exact same thing. You haven't restructured anything. You're just calling it something different. And kids are, I'm sorry, like we teach in higher ed, this is for sure the case, but I see it happening in K-12 too. It's like people think somehow, I've called it these things, the kids aren't going to notice. Guys, there are bad video games that people don't play because they suck. Okay?
Josh and I have played a few of them.
Like, there are educational games, they don't always take off. You know why? Because people just basically restructured things.
Name one educational game for me.
I can't, I can't, man.
Case closed.
Case closed. I don't know. I'm sure there was some alphabet video game I played sometime.
Math Blaster.
Oh, yes.
Math Blaster. That is
I remember
the only
Math
one
Blaster.
I can think of.
Yeah.
Literally, it was like, I don't know, it was some sort of like space game where you flew around and you had to shoot things, and the things that you shot were they like math equations or something.
Yeah.
I don't, that was Math Blaster. May it rest in pieces.
Yes. Anyway, so design. So, and this gets to, I think, to our second one. Maybe we hate this. I'm going to be honest, but here's if you take anything away from the game-based learning series from the High Tech Podcast, okay, it's that you leave badges to the Boy Scouts. Okay, here's the deal. I'm not against badges. I think badges can play a role in what we're talking about, but I'm just going to be honest. Your students don't care about the digital badge that you tied to an activity. Like, it doesn't matter. Badges are only useful, in my opinion, if they are really tied to displaying real, genuine progression. Like, if a badge is actually tied to something to prove that you did something important that they should care about, that's when a badge matters. And most people, they take badges and they stick them on as alternates to grades. They're like, oh, you did this activity. Here's an A. And also, I created this shield emblem that you will love for completing this paper I did.
You completed the thing you had to complete anyways.
Yeah, like you did this assignment. Go team. No. Now, badges aren't negative in that I think you could use a badge to say, like, let's say you give some extra awards out for, like, let's say you're writing a paper and you have a couple things that you want your students to go above and beyond on, right? So maybe
sure.
I don't know, I'm struggling with this one. Let's say you're writing a paper on tanks, okay? And you want to...
And you want them to make a model tank themselves so they understand the intricacies of tank making.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's not a requirement, but they could make the model tank.
They can do it. Let's say you're making an argumentative paper. And like, yeah, there's some requirements, but maybe I'm struggling with trying to think of the actual awards to hand out here. But like,
well, I think that they'd have to be like, so like completing the paper and doing the page limit and meeting the citations. That's all like your grade stuff. But maybe they introduced a multimedia element, and that was not a requirement, right? So they met all the basic requirements and they added multimedia. Here's your multimedia badge. You did something that you weren't expecting. And I don't think that they necessarily need to know that that's an option, right? I think that badges sometimes are all the more fun when they like achieve them accidentally. Now, if you tell them what badges are out there, they can shoot for them. There's some value there. There's some motivational theory that's available to that. But like, hey, somebody puts a YouTube videos in there or a TED Talk in there that reinforces what they wrote the paper on. Boom, badge, multimedia. You got that thing. Including another language. Maybe there's specific journals that you know are relevant to the study area that you're in, and if those students used some of the more expert journals, you could give them that expert journal badge. Like they could use any citation, right? But like if they use the good ones, there you go. Like they had to use the citations, but if they use specific ones, and that's something that Josh and I were talking about a little bit beforehand. I think this is a good moment for, is like the value in badges is that they need to be specific. They need to be to something that's going to happen and that not everyone does. When we play video games and the goal of the video game is to kill other players, giving me a badge for killing 10 players doesn't mean anything. I'm going to kill the 10 players if I play this game. However, getting 5 headshots in 50 seconds or something, right? That's like, wow, it took some effort. You had to find 5 people. You had to have good aim. It's very specific. And that plays into this. So that's where I think that it would work with a paper, is find like those specific ways you'd love to see them excel, even above the A, and find those kinds of badge items for that.
Yeah, so like, and I would put it this way. I'd tweak some of what you're mentioning there, right? So
okay,
like,
cool.
Let's talk just paper here for a second, right? So let's say multimedia. I don't know if I'd give a badge like for just putting it's weird. I don't know what paper we're writing that they need multimedia for it. Let's say they're writing, come on with an argument of some sort, right? They're writing an argumentative paper, right?
Yeah.
And like I would create badges for stuff that's like intangible but meaningful. So like here's a key of what maybe I'd throw out there. Like, if I'm having students wanting to argue, right? Okay, I want them maybe to give good arguments, I want them to give, but man, the student who goes above and beyond is the one who like really tugs at my heartstrings, you know? Like really, really gets to the heart of the issue. Like really, really gets to it. So maybe I don't know, I'm making this up as I go right now. Maybe I might create a badge that's like, made me cry. Okay? I'm going to create something that like gets to kind of like this motivational piece that is hard to grade on, is not something to say I'm going to take points off because you didn't emotionally get to me in your argument. But it is a next level in creating an argument for me where you can actually really get to the people, right? I don't know. That's what for me, I think badges are helpful to give tangible progress to the untangible.
Okay.
Right? And so like I don't know, I'm making this up as I go. I'm kind of, Will's looking at me like you're crazy.
No, I like it. I'm tying badges, I think, back to like a lot of the video game stuff I've experienced, but it is right to be thinking about this more in an academic sense. So to me, the stuff I was putting forward is how badges work for me in video games, but it's not 1-to-1. So I like that you're trying to emphasize like getting the kids and the students to think through things in different ways, or demonstrate their knowledge in different ways, or bring up something that's qualitatively different from one of their peers. I think that's still something worth acknowledging, and a badge would be a good tool to do that. I don't disagree with you.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure that out right now. But I think if I could stick to making the intangible tangible, it sounds really deep and good, so I'm going to stick with that. But I think like that's a struggle. I think at the end of the day in learning, it's tough to know when you're progressing.
Yeah.
Like it's difficult. So like if we can find ways to take those practical things and tie them to things that are meaningful, that's where it really helps motivate and make students feel, at the end of the day, makes them feel like they're doing better at what they're supposed to be doing.
Right.
And makes them maybe shoot for something that a grade just isn't going to get them to.
I remember some of my first days in my martial arts classes, right? Like, and I'm looking at this and I'm looking at everything. I'm a white belt. I'm looking up at blue belts. I'm looking up at black belts. I'm looking at 5th degree, 6th degree black belts. I'm like, I can't do that. Right.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, it's like, I want to do that. There's not as much opportunity for that in education, where we see this, not competition, but the option to see someone who knows more than you, who isn't the teacher, to see people who are slightly further along the path than you, who aren't perfect yet themselves. And I think that badges could be a way where it's like, hey, I'm not giving this person a badge because they're qualitatively a better person than you are a person. I'm giving this person a badge because they did something differently. It may be better, but it is differently than you are yet doing it. And I would hope that might activate a similar motivation of like, oh, he got the badge for using, 5 archaic words in his paper. I want the badge for using 5 archaic words in my paper. Who would have gotten that one? Will in class?
Probably you.
Yep.
Well, like, take this for example. Like, let's go discussion based, right? So let's talk about your discussing in class. To your point, like, they don't always have to know you're using these types of words, but like, let's just say you like make something up and you're like, you got a little like mic drop badge, and somebody, every class period, somebody says, the person who says something like the deepest thing or really gets to a nails a point, you very publicly give them a nice mic drop situation. You know what I mean? And like, it sounds ridiculous, but at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is acknowledge something that is often hard to acknowledge. You're trying to bring attention to a positive that is what we want students to do, but we're not going to grade them on it. We're not going to I'm still working through this. At the end of the day, I think the motivation piece is difficult, and I agree with Justin. There's other ways that we can find to kind of jump into that realm.
What you were just saying though brought up to me, I think, the perfect example. I think I've finally got it. I know what the badges should be, and I can tie it to the most wholesome example.
Okay.
Paul Hollywood's Hollywood handshake from the Great British Bake Off, right? This guy, at the end of the show, one baker wins like $2 and a pie plate. Like that's all they're there for. The British, I don't know how they managed to pull off this show that's so successful with zero money on the line. I mean, there's a little bit. But while they go week to week to week, Paul, every once in a while, when he tastes someone's bake, is just so blown away, so moved by it, he offers them a handshake. It doesn't happen every episode. It doesn't happen every other bake. You know what I mean? Like there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just like Paul will taste something, he goes, that's perfect, and shake their hand. And now, of course, they're on this quote unquote game show. They're trying to win but there's people that like in episodes are just crying or flummoxed over the fact that they got a handshake. Oh my gosh, they call their family then, I got a Bollywood handshake. Like that to them is the success point. They didn't make, everybody in the room made their bake that day. Everybody in the room made the bake that was edible. Sometimes they don't, to the point of academics, like I think it would qualify pretty well. Like you're saying, like everybody's supposed to do the paper. Somebody's going to do it to earn a handshake. And it might not just be the whole paper. It might be one specific element about the paper. And I think that's where badges work. It's like the badges should be about those specific elements that are handshake worthy. Now in my head, I want to make Hollywood handshake stickers and give them out to people who I think do excellent things in my life. That is one way to kind of demonstrate these badges, and it's made that show pretty successful because now those contestants try to get that handshake. On that point, though, I think this is a helpful transition to say, like, our third point, the third encouragement for you folks is to not be so serious. And a handshake is an easy one. That's simple. Badges do fit that thing. Like, it's not a high cost. They're not meant to be too difficult. But the things that we want you to do, like Justin's encouragements, were be playful. Consider a different attitude. Be upbeat. There's things to that can change just tomorrow. Your next class can be that much different.
Yeah, for sure. I think we take it way too seriously, and I think having that fun with it and just having a good time with it is part of this. It's this trying to figure out where we can add that fun into the course, because learning can, like, we enjoy learning, and learning can be fun in the situation, and trying to find that way to do it.
I enjoy learning my video games. I enjoyed learning how to edit our podcast. I enjoy my martial arts, learning my martial arts. Like, these are things I learn every day actively in my life, and I enjoy it. Did I enjoy Philosophy 101? Okay, I did. But would most people enjoy learning Philosophy 101? Like, is it that most interesting, engaging class in the world? I've heard a lot of people complain about it. So I think there's space to say, our academics should learn from these extracurricular areas, from gaming, from gameful learning, from playfulness, and improve the process that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, talking about games, I think we wouldn't be the High Tech Podcast if we didn't come up with some type of app or something that has something to do with games. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the PlayStation. No, I'm just joking.
Our entire app is the entire PlayStation.
Yeah, the entire PlayStation. I don't know if you've tried it before, but it's pretty cool. As far as the app this week, we found an app. I found it through a work situation called Construct 3. So really, you're like, that's a super great name.
Wow.
Like,
what does that mean?
I agree. It's a cool app. It's called Construct 3. It's basically, a game construction app. It's kind of how it works. So, now I will admit this, the caveat to this app this week is that Will and I have only really played with it at this point.
Right. We have not built a functioning game.
Yeah, I have not had a lot of reasons to build a functioning game, but the person I saw who did it built a functional music escape room. So what they did was they built this room where they had to line up the notes with the musical patterns to get to the next room or get to the next section of the room, which was kind of cool. So, like, this is another good example of some game-based learning. They literally created a game that required students to kind of figure out stuff, notes, patterns, to move on to other levels. So they're kind of creating these progressions, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's another way to do game-based learning, is literally create games that are for learning. And while I may not play that on my free time, if I had taken it in a class, I would have probably enjoyed it as a student. So it's okay. Right. So Construct 3 allows you to do this. Construct 3 allows you to kind of play with some games. Now, Will and I were very much creating a very basic game before we jumped in here.
It looked like Contra, frankly.
Yeah.
Old dude that shot bullets everywhere.
For all of you who are like, oh, I know what Contra is. No, it's a little like 2D game. They're not like crazy epic games. They're like 2D arcade game type of feel.
Very simple
but
mechanics,
it's very accessible.
But yeah, it's meant to be for a teacher, for someone to pick it up. You go through the tutorial. Don't skip it like Josh did at first. Go through the tutorial. It's going to teach you the steps you need. But frankly, it's like plug and play. Drag this background, pull this character, do this interaction. You have to be the one thinking through what you want them to accomplish, or what this game is maybe visually demonstrating that's relevant to your topic area. But I had a lot of faculty, Josh, that asked me during the early days of COVID, like, what can I do to make some more visual or digital representations of life and experience and things? Like, I had one person ask me, can I make a video game? And I'm like, no, I can't. Can you? Like, I don't know how we're going to make a video game to beat COVID. Right.
Yeah.
But this is the answer. This would have been the thing where, like, with the time and the practice, we could make a game out of this, no problem.
Yeah, for sure. So check it out. A couple things about it that are helpful. I think the big downside of Construct 3, it's not a normal, like, really awesome freemium tool that we have.
It's pretty limited.
So it's pretty limited. We tried
you can use the
version,
free to learn it, I think.
Yeah, you can basically use it to learn it. Understandably, though, they allow you to build video games. Come on, guys, let's be
and
let's be real here for a second.
They're standing behind their product enough to say, like, the reason that with the free one is you can't monetize the free ones, you can't get royalties on the free ones. But if you pay up and you're using that, like there are people that sell these games. So you may be playing a game on your phone that you didn't know was made in Construct 3.
Yeah. So it's a pretty sweet tool. That said, they do have education plans, so you can check that out. I would encourage checking out the free version just to play around with it. I will say their tutorial was super helpful. Do the tutorial when you jump in. Will and I did not initially, and I was super confused what we were doing. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should do the tutorial.
Read this.
And then it walked me through basically creating an initial game, which was kind of cool. I think the reason I think this would be helpful for those of you looking to get into game creation within a learning situation, maybe you're an instructor who wants to add this into their course, or you're somebody like in Will and I spaces where you're designing learning experiences and you're asked to do something like this. Construct 3 gives you other games to access. Like you can start off of other games that people created and edit and tweak them with the free or the paid version. So check out the free version. Go check it out. It's just at construct.net. And yeah, it's a pretty cool tool. If you're unsure about it, you can play games on their site that have been built in there. So you can kind of get a vibe for what the tool looks like. So it's a great way to just kind of create some games inside your course.
Yeah. And frankly, if you're not up for the digital side of that and the visuals and you think it's a little overwhelming or whatever, yeah, reach out to your instructional designer. Maybe they already have the skills to backfill what you're not comfortable with, right? We always kind of tell ourselves that the whole idea of high tech is that we want to reach higher education, educational technology space. We assume most folks might be faculty or teachers that would engage, but there may be IDs and stuff like that listening to us. We appreciate whoever is listening, but if the faculty member is the one that's struggling to think through how this would work, IDs need to be ready to pair alongside of them to figure this out. Because this is one of those spaces where I think an ID shines. The faculty can make the plan, the faculty can make the script, the goal of the game, and the ID could really show up with a technical skill to deliver on this final product. I'm not saying that this is too far to reach for faculty, but if you are intimidated, that's my encouragement to you, is try and find something like that. Otherwise, I've done a couple of role-playing games and stuff in my days that is just text-based. If you don't want to pick up an app like this, if you still want to do a game for your class, you can do role-playing games in Google Docs. There's ways to think this through, and might even be templates out there to help folks like create character templates and kind of do like Dungeons and Dragons style. Games can be anything. That's one of the beautiful things about it. It's up to your imagination. So my encouragement is imagine it. See what you can come up with.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is pretty much it, folks. We've concluded the game-based learning series. I hope that, Chris from the technical side, Justin from philosophical, pedagogical side, us from just the hodgepodge of it all, provides a couple of tangible references for you and some ideas that you can take in your classroom. In the ethos, the style of James Lang, start small. Small teaching is the way to do it. Consider something that's going to work in your next class or for the next week of class or for the next time you teach the class. Don't think about the entire course at once. Maybe, that can be too daunting. But if you are going to do it, whether it's small or the entire thing, design, design, design. That's the lead out mantra for you. What are we doing? Next episode is going to be 57. Right, Josh?
Yeah.
We're going to be back
at 57.
That's
what comes after 56. It's crazy. Numbers.
We're going to be going into something called Threadit. That's the app. It's going to be fun to kind of dig into a tool like that. It's a little bit video-based, a little bit Flipgriddy, but we'll save that for later. And,
a little bit more than video-based. It's video-based.
Yeah, exactly.
It's literally video-based.
It's what it is.
Yeah, you can check it out.
Digging into something that I used, studied, was a part of a presentation for in my master's degree, a tool called Create. It is not something that's necessarily public. It is something that's a Penn State University asset. But this Create concept gets into collaborative discussion and collaborative discussion making. So looking forward to talking through more of that and telling you what Create is. Until next time, make sure you're checking us out on Twitter at High Tech Podcast. Send us the penguin with a pencil. Really appreciate that. You can send that to the inbox at hightechpod.us. And you can head to our website at hightechpod.us to see all of our resources.
You thought you were going to trick me by doing it the way that I do it. You've been doing this the last couple of weeks. I've been prepared. I've been practicing in the mirror. I've been like, us. I will not be tricked by
He literally
false
leaned
people.
in and he was like watching me.
Oh yeah.
All that to say, that'll wrap us up on the game-based learning series. Until next time, please join us again next week for another episode of continuing to learn what it looks like to harness technology in the classroom, whether it's online, in person, or in a video game. See ya!
See ya.